Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. How are you doing? This individual here is Helen Lewis. I'm sure many of you recognise her from an interview she did several years ago with Jordan Peterson. Now, Peterson's got his own problems, of course, but Helen is a raving lunatic. She is a classic example of the expression, so open-minded, your brains fell out. So obviously, when there's a left-wing academic consistently making herself look like a human chicken McNugget in public, I like to watch them because it gives me a chuckle. So that's what we're going to do. She's going to make a load of nonsense, ridiculous, juvenile claims, and I'm going to rip the piss out of her. Top draw content, I'm sure you'll agree. Right then, let's get started, shall we? Helen, tell me why creating things is a terrible idea, please.
I think genius is fundamentally a right-wing term because it's about individual.
Got me laughing 3 seconds in. Helen, well done. Jimmy Carr couldn't manage that. Genius is a right-wing term. Yeah. So if you say Einstein, he was a genius, wasn't he? Alas, you are now a proud member of the alt-right. Remember when everyone was talking about the alt-right all the time? Doesn't really exist, does it? Well, you're one of them, so suck it up. Yeah, you use the term genius. You want to go around your granny's house and smash her face in with a brick because she's got a Labour sign in the front window. Of course you do. Makes loads of sense.
Individuals, and often it is used for right-wing ends too. So in the example of kind of Silicon Valley, AI being the most obvious one, right? These are just genius companies led by genius men, and they
I think we'll disagree about them being genius companies. Silicon Valley. Jack Doorstop used to own Twitter, and he's got the moniker because he'd lose a battle of wits to an inanimate object. We all know that specifically she means one bloke, Elon Musk, who was only a big player in Silicon Valley very recently when he bought Twitter. He sold PayPal early. He's made his money in automobiles and rocketry. She's trying to make out like she's being impartial. We know you mean. We know you mean. Just say it. Just say, I hate Elon because I'm in a cult and we were told many, many times over the last 3 years who to hate. Doesn't have to be any logic or common sense to it. We've just been told this is who we must hate now, even though he was popular up until very recently, and 10 years ago you were all noshing him off in public. Funny enough, because you were all being told to love him then. When he was on Jon Stewart's show and Stephen Colbert, and they're all going, wow, you're such a genius, man. You're making green energy. Then, despite being a lifelong Democrat, he holds his nose and votes Republican in one election, and all of a sudden he's a one-bollocked dictator with a toothbrush mustache doing problematic salutes in public. This stuff is juvenile. He's a grown man, and we know what he believes, and he did it for decades. It's juvenile to just call anyone who you get pointed at by your overlords a proto-fascist or whatever bollocks terms they come up with these days. But anyway, I'm ranting. We know you're talking about love. Come on, finish your stupid, ill-thought-out, moronic screed. Please, carry on.
Should be allowed to do what they want. And if regulations and tax are holding them back, then those must be kind of blasted through, because otherwise we won't get to the future of humanity. And then
Do you know how much income tax one man, Elon Musk, paid in 2021? I'll give you a clue. It'd probably pay for about, 40 billion school dinners. In 2021, Elon Musk paid an estimated $11 billion in US income taxes. This substantial tax bill stemmed from him exercising stock options and subsequent sale of Tesla shares. The large tax bill is noteworthy because it's one of the largest single-year tax payments made by any individual in US history. What a selfish prick. He's blasting through the income tax. He's blasting through them, not paying a penny. 11 billion. One bloke. 11 billion. Just think of the good the government could do with $11 billion. One man paid that. And this spunk Bowser is sitting there going, oh yeah, he's a prick. How much income tax have you paid? He paid more tax on his own in 2021 than 10 million academics. So who's done the most good? At least a portion of that must have got spent on sick children and dying pensioners and relaying roads and school books and sandals for impoverished ghetto babies. How much good can you do with all that money? And here she is calling him a wanker. Makes loads of sense. This is just another example of the lessers insulting the betters. That man's done more for humanity in the last 25 seconds than any 2,000 academics have done in the last 500 years. These people are worthless and they do nothing. That's academics for you. Those who can, do. Those who can't, teach or become an academic and just talk bollocks on the internet all day. I mean, glass houses, I talk bollocks on the internet, but that's only a hobby. I assure you, I pay tens of thousands in income tax every year, and I only sleep at night by telling myself that all those tax dollars get spent on bombs and napalm.
The funny thing is, we're talking about this, they just brought out on Netflix, I haven't watched it yet, the drama about the Titan submersible disaster. And I just think for every time you let somebody blitz through all the regulations and rules and you get something good out of it, you do also probably get a Titan submersible disaster when some guy goes, safety testing? I don't know her. It turns out that those rules are there for a reason. It is objectively quite good that we do make people pay tax, that we don't live in this state where everybody just kind of scraps for themselves. It's also a lie, right? Because actually, if you look at someone like Musk, the cars are supported by carbon credits. That's how Tesla operates. He couldn't have, SpaceX could not have survived without NASA contracts, and that is income that is regular and big and investment guaranteed enough because it comes from the tax base of the US. It doesn't come from private investment. So I find that these stories are often partial and exaggerated for political ends.
Yeah,
unbelievable. A woke academic using the term exaggerated for political ends is laugh out loud funny. That is so hypocritical. That's like Elton John and Ricky Martin calling me gay for giving my dad a brief hug on his way to intensive care. It's unbelievable. Everything she said there was flat out wrong, lies, or exaggerated for political ends. 90% of SpaceX's revenue comes from civilian contracts. This year alone, Elon just put these numbers out there. In 2025, SpaceX's projected revenue is approximately $15.5 billion. This marks a significant increase from their 2024 revenue, which was estimated to be around $11.8 billion. The Starlink satellite internet service is a significant contributor to SpaceX's revenue, with a projected $11.8 billion for 2025. NASA contracts, on the other hand, are estimated at $1.1 billion. So $12 billion from his own private invention, Starlink, and $1 paltry billion off NASA, less than 10%. And while I'm on, NASA would be paying twice that if they were having to go through a competitor, because nobody else can do it for cheap because they haven't got reusable rockets. And astronauts were having to be sent up by the Russians, and it was costing them 4 times as much. And we were paying the Russians. Better to pay an American company, no, with tens of thousands of American employees. And I will make this point for all of private industry, right? 9 out of 10 inventions that make our lives better come from private companies and private individuals, inventors, telephones and TV sets and radios, and Henry Ford. Think of Henry Ford. If it wasn't for him, we'd all still be using horses, wouldn't we? When a private inventor, a capitalist businessman, makes a private invention because he's motivated by making himself wealthy, everybody benefits. We got trucks and automobiles being ubiquitous. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the private automobile companies. I'm happy because I don't have to walk everywhere. He's happy because he gets rich. The government's happy because they get loads of income tax revenue, and even the animals are happy. Because have you ever seen a donkey in Afghanistan carrying 200 sacks of rice on its back? You look at him and you just think, yes, that donkey's having a shit day. Everyone wins. Starlink, think of it. Think of it. It's a private company making an invention that will allow the whole world to get on the internet, so they all win. Elon wins because he gets more money. Every single one of his employees wins because we all get a little bit more money. The government gets billions and billions in tax revenue, which they can spend on other things that make people's lives good. Or, in the case of the United States, bombing babies and orphanages. But you get the point. Nobody loses here. Nobody loses. But commies think it'd be better if we all wore grey uniforms, got given jobs as soon as we left the state-funded propaganda schools, and then spent the rest of our days on a production line, making enforced ginsters pasties to feed the populace. These people are deranged. Nothing they say makes any sense, and everything they say is for a political end. So that's a bit of a rant. Tens of thousands of people have paid the mortgages, fed the families, and got a bit of dignity from doing a hard day's work, working for individual capitalist men's companies. They invent new things, the government makes money, the people get the things, the creators get even more money. No, there are no negatives to private capitalist industry other than if you're a brain-dead Marxist whose political ideology hasn't changed in a century. And despite the fact everywhere it's ever been tried, everyone starves to death, you still haven't got the brains you were born with, so you can't see that the reason real communism's never been tried is because it can't work. Because when you punish people for putting in a lot of effort and inventing and creating and grafting, it's a race to the bottom and everybody gives up. But that's just what I think. If you think the world would be a better place if inventors stopped inventing and the government was in charge of everything, you let me know in the comments. But just remember, you wouldn't be able to write it and I wouldn't be able to read it if it wasn't for capitalist enterprise. Oh yeah, and you definitely wouldn't be able to write it and I definitely wouldn't be able to read it if we were toiling in a salt mine at the behest of our commie overlords. Alright, that's me for the day. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you all tomorrow. Toodle pip. Cheers.